Welcome to FM Live. My name is Mike Usrey, and in today's live video, this is Grill the Keith. No, okay, it's not quite like a roast. We're actually just going to ask a lot of questions because Keith's a mysterious guy. I think there's a lot that he has to say, and, you know, he has a lot of Miata history, so there's a lot of interesting things that he can probably tell us. Sure. But this whole video is going to be finding out who is the enigma that is Keith.
Oh, jeez.
What does he do? Why is he here? I have a lot of questions that need to be answered, but of course, if you have questions and you'd like to know something about Keith, post them in the comments. We will try to get to as many as possible. We won't be here all day. I imagine we'll run out of time. But if you have comments or questions, put them in the comments and I will try to get to as many as possible throughout the video. Keep them respectful, please. Without further ado, Keith, hello.
Hey, Mike.
Nice to see you. I'm going to pass this mic to you when I answer, or have you answer a question. So let's start off with something really easy. How long have you been at FM, and how did you start at FM?
I've been at FM full-time since 2001. So at the moment, that's what, 22 years? I think I just celebrated my 22nd anniversary here. But I actually worked at FM as a graphic designer. I worked remotely for FM starting in 96. And that came out of a logo design that Bill Cardell put out. He was looking for a new logo for the company. I put in one of the proposals. I didn't win, but I put in a full proposal and Bill countered, basically said, hey, do you want to do all of our graphic design work for us, doing catalogs and advertising and stuff like that. That logo that I did for Flyin Miata eventually turned into the logo for MiataNet. It's just an outline of a car, a little shark-shaped thing. I don't know if we have any of them kicking around.
There's actually, I think, one up there over the top of the diner room, right?
That one over the dining room. That's the one that won the Flyin Miata competition. That was the one we used. It was a little car flying along. It's a nice little drawing. And then, in 2001, I was in the tech industry, and everything exploded. I worked for Nortel Networks, and when that shut down, Flyin Miata needed a tech, and I said, well, what the heck, I'll give it a try. And I got stuck.
Well, sorry, you're welcome. Okay, well, let's see. I think I was in probably 4th grade at the time when you came down here, 2001, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I probably just finished getting over eating crayons at that point. So we actually already have some pretty good comments and questions here. So.
No.
Let me see what we have live first. Oh, actually, yeah.
You're going to have to start asking questions. They're coming in fast.
Yeah, we've got a lot of them. Okay, let's go over here and do one of these. So let's keep this simple. We'll do one more simple one. What is your favorite thing about working at Flyin Miata?
The great people, Mike. The great people are the best part.
That's right. You're welcome.
Yeah, that'll do me some favors later, I hope. I get to play with cars for a living. Who doesn't like that? It's not all glamorous, running around the racetrack. Sometimes it's driving trucks cross country. Sometimes it's banging my heads against code for an e-commerce store or whatever. But it's always doing something interesting, and it's always doing something that people appreciate. And I like solving problems, so it all kind of works together. I followed the things I like to do and ended up here.
I suppose that's a good thing because we have lots of problem creators. I'm looking behind the camera here. So, one of the comments was, did Y2K lead to you working at Flyin Miata? Some of you kids probably don't even know what Y2K is.
No, it was not Y2K that took down the tech industry in Canada in 2001. That was the tech bubble bursting. But so I made it through Y2K just fine. I was out in the middle of the woods on snowshoes, away from as many people as possible.
And away from Miatas.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the common questions we got is, how many Miatas have you owned in total? How many do you currently own?
Well, here's the thing. I've never sold a Miata. I still own every one I've ever had. My first car was a Miata in 1993. I still have that car. I still have the Smurf car that my well, my girlfriend at the time bought it, and then I married her, so I ended up with the sort of inherited the car. Still got that one. I've still got the Targa Miata, and I have now inherited Miata number 338, which was my father's. We did a couple of videos on that one. Right behind us, yeah, which is a nice little survivor. So I've currently got 4. I've never had more than 4, so I've got them all still.
So you could almost say that while that's like the most heroic story for a Miata nerd, I've actually heard of many more people that have a lot more Miatas than you. Shout out to the Gronzeths in South Dakota. I know you guys are absolute Miata fanatics. So I think last time I touched base with them, they had like 7 or 8 currently.
Actually, when I think about it, I've taken a couple apart.
Wait, no, you did get rid of one.
Did I? What did I get rid of?
Does that count, Stinky?
I never owned Stinky. I only held Stinky for a while, so I never really owned that car.
Okay.
But there were a couple of cars. I took one apart to build my Lotus 7 replica. That wasn't really a complete Miata. It only had, I think, 2 wheels on it when I got it, and I did not improve that situation. And the Targa Miata was built out of a couple of different cars. But in terms of ones that I've actually owned and registered, then yeah, 4.
Gotcha. So I need to catch up. I've got a little ways. Actually, I'm at 3. My NC is number 3 right now, so. All right. Yeah, we've got some good ones in here. Man,
great.
Thank you guys for putting in all these questions. This is awesome. Okay. I think this is actually from Travis. This is a humor break. Do Canadians prefer waffles or pancakes with their maple syrup?
I grew up with waffles, so that is my preference is towards waffles.
As it should be.
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, that's important.
How was the transition from moving all the way from Canadian land down to Colorado? Because that's a long ways. And you, not too long ago, brought this car, the red car, down. It was a few years ago now, but how was that transition moving across North America and, from one country to another to come down here to work at FM?
Well, when I joined FM, it was a sort of, I've got this little bit of a payout from being let off from Nortel when they were closing everything down, and Flyin Miata needed somebody. So I said, well, what the heck, I'll give it a try. I had my house in Ottawa. I had a friend who was living there. I had someone else who needed a place to stay. So basically, I rented it to them, left everything there, drove out here in my 1967 Land Rover with whatever would fit in the back, and a friend of mine drove behind me with my 1990 Miata with whatever, and that was everything I brought with me. If it didn't fit in the short wheelbase Land Rover or the Miata, it didn't come.
Wait, how much horsepower did that Land Rover have?
I think it was 48 at the wheels when he tested it on a dyno.
So
might have 42 actually.
That was a long drive.
Well, it's got a hand throttle because it's basically a piece of agricultural equipment. So I just set the hand throttle and cruised along at about 55 miles an hour all the way across. Iowa was a pain because it kind of goes like this a little bit, but Nebraska's nice and flat. So the hand throttle works like a cruise control. So
what you're saying is you drove a tractor from Ottawa to Colorado.
Yes, and it was the first time I'd driven it more than 100 kilometers at a time. So I think it was about 4.5 days to get here, I think. Yeah.
You're a brave man.
I got passed by every car in the U.S. at least twice. And when we were going over the passes near Vail, I was on the shoulder at 25 miles an hour, doop, 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 playing leapfrog with a couple of little RVs and stuff like that. We'd stop to cool down and,
Wait, so you did pass somebody?
Yeah, we passed one that was literally on fire at the time after he'd passed us. So, I mean, we get past him. Yeah, so I moved out here with no expectation of actually staying. It was something, I'll give it a try, it'd be interesting. I like the people I work with. It's a cool thing to try. And that was in August I came out here. And when I went back to Ottawa to visit my family at Christmas time, I realized that I had mentally moved out here. I had decided this is where I was going to be. And I walked into my old house and I was like, I'd forgotten I had all this stuff. But also I'd forgotten how much I just got up and walked away. And a couple of years later, I sold the house and we brought a trailer full of stuff out here. But yeah, it was a very easy transition because as soon as I got here, I was right where I wanted to be. So that helped a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. I have owned a Geo Tracker, but I think it had maybe 60 horsepower. And it still struggled to go over Vail Pass. So I can only imagine. And the only time you can say that a Land Rover is more reliable to go across country. But you made it, so I didn't realize you drove it all the way down here. That's amazing. Let's see. Let's move on to something more Miata related here. Oh, actually, here's a good one, another common one. Have you owned any Miatas other than NAs? You kind of alluded to this already, so I think I know the answer, but
Yeah, I've never owned a Miata that was not an NA. But when I started at Flyin Miata in 2001, the NB was still a new critter. So I had access to them at work, and with NCs, NDs, I've never had to own one of those because I always had access to them. You know, I drove them for work, drove them for development stuff. So, I mean, if I was just a private individual, I may very well have bought something else. But just because I had access to them all the time, I never really felt the need to. I'd like to get myself an ND, a black RF. I'm sort of got my eyes open for one. Yeah, there we go. And it won't stay completely stock, but yeah, that's the only one that sort of tweaked my interest.
so I suppose the next obvious question is, what's your favorite Miata?
My favorite individual Miata or favorite generation?
Let's say generation.
This is where I'm going to piss off approximately 3/4 of the Miata internet.
This
'cause
is
it won't be theirs.
opinion. It's opinion. It's fine.
I've got 4 NAs. I think that kind of says something right there. I mean, it's the original, it's the icon, it's the pure one it's the one that I grew up with. You know, that's the one that I first bought. That was the first, physical embodiment of what I thought a car should be. But I do still like that ND, that RF. Just it's a nice little car.
I agree. I think they're all fantastic. How's that for internet points? No, everybody knows I have an NC now. Yacht Club. So let's see. Here's one that not everybody out there probably knows, but Miatas aren't your only vehicles, even though you currently have 4 NAs that you've always owned. It's good that his house and his property, he has a backyard that has lots of room in his current house because he needs lots of room, actually, because you have how many vehicles total that you own?
They have to be road registered?
Let's just say that,
Reside on your property.
yeah, they reside on
Yeah.
your property. That's probably the best way to say it.
I think it's a dozen. I think I'm at a dozen cars. And a surprising number of them don't have the engine they came from the factory with. I have a British car with an American engine. I have a German car with a Japanese engine. I have a Japanese car with an American engine. It kind of moves around. So let's see. I've got an E39 M5 that I bought right at the bottom of the market. I got lucky with that one. I've got a big Dodge truck that I use for towing stuff around because you need a big Dodge truck. I've got a 1966 Cadillac sedan DeVille. I've actually got 2 of those, I suppose. The one was mostly a parts car. I've got the 67 Land Rover 88-inch Series 2A. I've got an MGB that's got an LS1 in it because, of course. I've got an 85 CRX SI. I've got a Vanagon, Volkswagen Vanagon Westfalia with a Subaru engine and a 6-speed in it. That's actually got some pretty fun stuff built into it. I've got a classic Mini, a couple of Jeeps, 1990 Cherokee, 2000 Grand Cherokee, and we've got a Tesla Model 3 as well. So I think that's it. Someone's out there counting, but that's
I lost track.
Yeah, that's roughly where we are,
Sorry.
I think.
I probably ran out of fingers.
It's about a dozen. I've probably forgotten something. I'm trying to picture where they're all parked. I think 7 of them are undercover, so they're well protected. So those are the good ones.
The good ones. All my vehicles are parked outside, dang it. All right. Let's see. Oh, here, let's get into more opinion.
Oh boy.
We've already discussed what your favorite Miata generation is.
Oh, you don't ask that one. The least favorite?
What's-
I'm not answering that one. Nope.
No, come on. This is opinion. It doesn't have to be because of any real reason. You might just not like it because you don't like the way it looks. It doesn't have room for 21-inch donk wheels. I don't know. You can have whatever reason you want.
Well, I will tell you that NCs don't fit me right. The seats don't fit me well. I'm not as comfortable in an NC as I am in the other generation. So I'm going to say that just because of that, because I physically don't my geometry doesn't work as well with an NC, that is probably my least favorite. But that's the only reason. I've certainly enjoyed driving a lot of NCs. I've spent a lot of seat time in them. But generally speaking, if it's the one I choose to spend time in, that is my last choice, just because the seats don't fit right for me.
All right, I guess I can respect that. So I guess no captain's hat for you.
No captain's hat for me.
All right, I suppose. Okay, let's see, what else we have? We have a lot of comments.
There's a lot of Targa questions. We should probably hit a couple of those.
Yeah, let's do some Targa stuff. So, because that was another pretty popular one. One of the most popular Targa questions we got was, do you ever plan to do Targa again? Let's start there, and then we'll go into some of the other questions that happened.
Okay, and I apologize for not driving the Targa car today. It's actually still on race tires from last weekend, so brought the 338 instead. I would love to go back to do Targa Newfoundland again. It's actually on right now. Leg 6, I think, is on today, or leg 5 just finished today, I think. That would make sense. It's Thursday. It's a much smaller event. I think it's Thursday. It's a much smaller event than it was when I did it. They had some hard times through COVID. They weren't able to run for a couple of years. Last year they didn't run because of small numbers. This year they're running right now, but it's a very, very small field. For example, if I was in the open, there's only one car in the open division right now. When we did it last time, I think there were 7 in open division. The first time we did it, there were 60 odd cars in the whole thing. So there's not as much competition in it as there used to be. But mostly for me, it was a bucket list thing. And then I was lucky enough to make it happen a second time, which you don't get to do your bucket list twice. I don't think it's the best place to focus my energies now. There's other things I could be doing that would be, other bucket list things to try out. I did almost get a chance to go back in 2015. I had a deal worked out with Mazda. They were going to give me one of the prototype Global Cup cars, the ND, the very first ND competition cars. They were going to loan me one of those 3 prototypes, so 2 prototypes you saw the pictures of. I was going to be supported by the guys at Long Road Racing. They had a bunch of my rally equipment. They were prepping the car. And then about 3 weeks before the event, the lawyers found out about it and said, you want to give a prototype car and run it on public roads in another country? And that just shut everything down. There was no more discussion. The organizers wanted us there. We were getting all the licensing in place. We were working on getting everything together. And it would have been the global competition debut for the ND, because this was 2015. They hadn't really been out there yet. The Global Cup hadn't started yet. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. So that close. Would have been a good run. The only thing I am happy about is that the Global Cup cars didn't have tops at the time, and it poured rain for about the first 4 days. So I don't feel too bad about missing out on that particular experience.
Yeah. Even your Targa Miata has a hard top that you generally run on it most of the time.
It's fully waterproof,
So, yeah, that would help. Dang it, that would have been cool, but once again proving that lawyers.
Now you've lost all the lawyers.
I know. Sorry. Maybe not sorry, lawyers. Don't do that. Let us race. We just want to race. So besides that, Targa Newfoundland, another one that we got that I thought was a pretty good one, is on the 2 Targa Newfoundland races that you did compete in. How did you prepare for that? Because it's not just show up and you run your 5-minute session and then you go watch cones for a half hour until it's your turn to run again. This isn't an autocross. This is a much bigger organized event, such as a rally might be. So what did you do to prepare for that? Because it wasn't just you, also you had a crew, your wife came out. What did you do to prepare for this kind of an event?
Well, there's several different levels to that. For the car, I obsessed. I would go to sleep thinking about what to do about the car, what to do, how to change it, how to modify it, how to build it. It took me a couple of years to build the car the first time. And then we put the V8 engine in and did a little more hardening of it at that point. So a lot of constant work on the car, constant thinking about the car. I did all the prep work at home. I built the car on jack stands in my garage, basically. So that was, that's fun. I love having problems to go over. And I used I've been doing off-roading before that with the old Land Rover, and I used a lot of the design or the engineering decisions or directions building the rally cars I would for the Land Rover, such as how can this possibly fail? How can I prevent it from failing, and how can I make it, if it does fail, that it fails gracefully? So a lot of that sort of thinking, you can't afford to have something break in the middle of a rally. You can't afford to have something break when you're stuck in the middle of Moab in an old Land Rover. So there's a lot of work done on hardening it. For myself, when we went to the California Rally School, basically the licensing program to run in the California Rally Series. So we flew out to Ridgefield or something like that, I think it's called, in California. Did a 2-day thing there just to get our NASA rally license because we needed that for the actual requirements. I spent a lot of time reading the rule book and asking questions. That thing was built 100% to the rules, I tell you. I think I forced them, like, how long does the toe strap have to be? I think with the questions, because I'm worried about weight here. So, can I bring a 6-inch toe strap? And they said, well, it's going to be used to tow you out of the ditch, so use your own best judgment. And then for my own professional development, I guess, I spent a lot of time at track days driving offline, trying to go around corners different ways. What happens if, I enter this corner on the wrong side because I don't know where it's going to go. We did a time, speed, distance rally, the MG rally Glenwood Springs, to try to get a feel for reading route books and communicating in the car. So we pull up. The MG rally is obviously it's for vintage cars. There's not a lot of new MGs on the road around here these days.
No.
Not too many. So we're surrounded by MGAs and Bs and TCs and whatever, plus Triumphs, and basically it's a little British car show. And we show up in a Miata that's fully striped. We had worn RA1s on it. We had a rally computer on the dashboard. We're wearing, we're in race seats with harnesses and stuff like this. The car was fully kitted out. Skid plates all over the bottom. We get to the start, and they wave us off, and we turn the wrong way out of the parking lot right at the start. We just proved that we were complete and utter novices. The guy who was having the most fun on that whole rally was a guy with a Triumph who didn't have a working speedometer or a passenger. He would just follow people around for a while until he got bored, and then he'd go blasting off in the distance and found someone else, and then he'd follow them because they knew where they were going. Follow them and just go screaming off. But we learned a few things. The biggest thing we learned that there were way too many holes in the bottom of the car from me taking things out and just not sealing up. And we just about put ourselves to sleep on the interstate on the way home from carbon monoxide poisoning. So there were a lot of important lessons. Also, we found out that our seats were only comfortable for about a half hour before our butts went to sleep. So there were some very important things we learned on that particular test run. It was not necessarily successful, but it was very worthwhile.
Yeah, those are not the kind of things you want to find out on the middle of a multi-day
No.
run across a whole province or a big portion of a province. In
Yeah, most
Canada.
of it, yeah.
In a different country.
4,000 miles from home. Yeah.
Right. I don't have much to say to that. That's kind of amazing. That's a lot of preparation work that, honestly, I've not done anything that grand of a skill racing-wise because most of my experience has been autocross, small track days. You show up, they do tech inspection. If you break on the track, they come tow you off. You figure it out in the paddock, whatever. You can't really do that at Targa, Newfoundland. I mean, if you get stuck somewhere or something happens, you're just on the side of the road by yourself until maybe hours later, right?
Yeah, the course closing car, you stay at the side of the road, you put up the triangles, let you know they're safe, and then you basically stay there until the stage is closed and they come out with a tow truck and they drag you back. So, you can get back to a service area eventually, but you're going to lose, at the very least, you're going to lose a huge amount of time. That's what happened to us in 2011 when the main relay failed, is we had to get towed home. So we sat by the side of the road until everyone else was through. We were running close to the back of the pack anyway, because they had the faster cars would leave last. So we were already back there. But still, yeah, we took a lot of penalties, lost a lot of time simply because we were sitting on the side of the road. It is definitely I really enjoyed endurance racing as well. I've done the Thunderhill 25 3 times, I think. As in the pits every time. I was a mechanic for the Mazda Speed team for the NC when it did its competition debut in 2005, I think it was. And I raced with the 949 racing team a couple of times, once as a mechanic and once as a car chief. And it's a very similar thing in terms of you just can't afford to break. At a track day, a time trial, yeah, you can run the car hard. It's only going to last 5 laps, whatever. You make it work and then whatever. But for endurance racing, you can't afford that. So it's a very different mindset. You're playing almost high-speed chess, and on the Targa, it was often a matter of risk versus reward on stages. There were sometimes you would just say, okay, the car's going to take a little more damage if I run harder, but I need the time, so I'm willing to take, a harder line through those bumps, or willing to let it hit things harder, because it'll probably make it through. I've got a better chance, I need to get this time. Or there's times when you just say, I can't I don't want to take the chances. It's not worth it, and so you back off. You drive more slowly. There's a lot more strategy in that. That's a lot of fun to try to figure out.
Yeah, again, back to that whole planning thing where, again, most local track days, you just show up and you drive as fast as you think you can stay on the course usually, or at least that's my general rule of thumb. I'm not that fast of a driver, so, you know. But that's pretty incredible. It's kind of too bad about not being able to go again, but like you said, you've already hit it twice, so having done the Targa Newfoundland twice already, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a full month away from work. I mean, it's a full month away from home when I do it. It's a big commitment. So yeah, it's not something you can sort of jump in and do that. And my poor wife, when I do it, I'm obsessing for a year beforehand. So that's apparently not as much fun for her as it is for me.
I was gonna say, you should probably give her a shout out for all that work she did.
Yeah, Janelle was my wife is my rally navigator, so she's the one sitting strapped in beside me as I'm driving. I'm having all the fun, and she just gets to see a route book and tell me which way to go and hope I'm not crashing. So she does not enjoy it as much as I do. She's definitely the bravest person in the car, but yeah, it's not as much of a treat for her. So she will go. You know, she has said that she's willing to go back. 2015, she was willing to go back and navigate, but I don't think she was heartbroken when that fell down.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Being thrown around and don't even see where you're going. Okay, well, we've probably talked about Targa Newfoundland for a while, so let's move on to another topic here. Let's see if we have any other really good ones. Gosh, we have a lot of comments. Thanks, guys. Much appreciated. So, let's see. All kinds of speculation.
How was it riding with Matt Farah?
Yeah, actually, that's a good one. So, obviously, you have been in lots of publications from Flyin Miata, but also you've been in some from a few different automotive journalists. We've, Flyin Miata has been featured in Road and Track, Car and Driver, Automobile Magazine, Top Gear, or no,
Top Gear Magazine.
Yeah, Top Gear Magazine, that's the one. We've also had at least two episodes.
Drive Tribe Motor Magazine.
Drive Tribe Motor Magazine.
Yeah, Proving Ground on NBC Sports.
Yeah, and I'm probably forgetting some. I'm so sorry if I've forgotten it. There's been quite a few, and you've been a part of most of them. But one of the more memorable recent ones was with Matt Farah on Smoking Tire, I believe, with Andy and Indy, the NDs, obviously, I would hope. One, it's the turbocharged ND that is actually over here, this car. And then our V8 converted
Actually,
ND.
it wasn't that one. It was a different ND. It was Rufus.
Oh, it was Rufus. That's
Our
right.
RF, yeah.
Yeah, which we have sold off. There's another. Actually, I don't know if that one's still in Texas or not. It was sold off, and another gentleman was enjoying it, as far as I know.
It's somewhere. I've been in contact with the current owner. It's not in Texas anymore. He's moved a little further north from there. But
Gotcha. But anyway, sorry, Rufus, our red RF, and then Indy, our V8 car, both of which are not currently with us anymore. But anyway, the question is, what was it like driving with Matt Farah? So, what's your experience with Mr. Smoking Tire?
Matt and I get along quite well, actually. He's a good guy. I enjoyed spending time with him. I don't watch a lot of YouTube videos, so I hadn't actually watched any Smoking Tire. And same thing when I deal with any of these other like influencer types. I generally haven't seen any of their stuff, but that's me being old. What can I say? I prefer to read my words and listen to my words and whatever. But no, Matt and I hit it off pretty nicely because, I showed up on time. We spent some time hanging around talking. This is when he was still doing the one take. I don't think he does the one take stuff anymore. But
I don't think so.
It literally is one take. He gets you park the car. He walks around. It looks at you. Talk about it a little bit. Does some shots of the car driving up and down the road. And then he jumps in, and you've got a couple of cameras in the car, and he just takes off and thinks, talks aloud about what he's experiencing. So it's pretty legit in that regard. It's 100%. This is the first time he's been exposed to the car. And he asked me to come along with him, and it was just fun. We were just sitting along talking about an interesting car, a cool car. He was really enjoying driving it. He's not out there to set lap records as he's screaming around these public roads. He's aware of the fact that he is driving not only someone else's car, but he's on roads he doesn't, that are open to the public. He doesn't necessarily know the car. He did appreciate the fact that our cars were generally prepped to a reasonably high degree. He wasn't worried about them being sketchy, because I think there's been a few sketchy ones. And he wasn't trying to, do big smoking burnouts despite the name, around corners and stuff like that. So I was quite comfortable riding along with him. It was a good conversation. We actually had a good time talking. Some of the other journalists I've ridden with, generally speaking, they tend to be reasonably competent. There was one poor guy, I'm not gonna give the name of the publication, but it was their social media manager, and I went down there with a turbo ND, and they sent me out with them to go for a test drive. I don't think he'd ever driven an automatic or a stick before. I think every car he had driven only had 2 pedals, and that poor clutch the entire time. We're in LA traffic, going down to the beach. I have no idea how LA works, so I don't know where we went and where we came from. But that poor clutch, at that point I started getting a little nervous because I didn't think we were going to get home because he was going to burn the clutch out just driving around town.
Oh no.
Driving on track, I've never been worried with a journalist, generally speaking. They've a couple of the younger ones, I think they're a little more reliant on some of the safety aids than maybe they could be. But generally speaking, the ones that get assigned to our beat are the real car nerds, the ones who, they've put the time in, they're doing what they're doing because they love cars, and usually they've got some track experience, so they're not doing anything too sketchy.
Gotcha. Yeah. I can only imagine. It's a little bit unnerving for me to hand my keys over to, a friend or a coworker type of thing, and that's mostly just because I'm particular. But, somebody that's their job is to go out and hammer it, or at least,
Push it.
experience
Yeah.
what it's like, when you get into boost or when you tap onto, 400 plus horsepower in a V8 Miata, that kind of stuff. So somebody that you might have just met that morning. So it's good that you're dealing with people that have experience, and Matt definitely does seem like he's been around a few high horsepower cars. So
Yeah, I think Matt was definitely one of the more chill guys to deal with. He was, like I said, we got along very well. I've been in touch with him a couple of times since. There was one time he needed a car for a particular segment of something he was shooting with Haggerty, so put him in contact with an owner. So yeah, he's definitely been one of the better ones to hang with. There's been surprisingly very few scary moments. I don't want to be a track instructor, especially for novice group stuff anymore, but I'm okay strapping in beside journalists, generally speaking.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that it's probably safe to say you're braver than most when it comes to that. It's a good thing you have lots of track experience yourself. Okay. So let's see, what else do we have? Some good stuff that's popping up here. Here's a good one. What's your favorite thing when working on a Miata, and why?
I mean, my favorite thing about working on any car is just making it better. It's one thing to fix broken problems, get it better. It's another thing to sort of hone it. I really enjoy that part of it, whether it's a prototype of something that's been a little rough, or whether it's taking, a slightly older car that just needs some final polishing to get into really good shape. And every time you work on it, it just gets that much better. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy that part of it. Miatas specifically, I love working on 1.6 Miatas because that's where I started. That's where, I have this huge depth of history. Yeah, Ethan's not here to cheer it on. This huge depth of history with these cars. That's the car I first started wrenching on, really. So, for me, it's like going home. When I started working on this car again, number 338, and I'm popping the hood, and like everything is exactly where I know where it is. I know where all the wires are. I don't have to refer to anything. When I started at Flyin Miata, I was working as I had a lot of hats on at that point. I was running the website. I was representing Flyin Miata on all the forums and everything like that. I was doing phone support, but I was also one of the techs. I was out installing turbo kits and doing clutch jobs and in between phone calls. And so, of course, most of our work at that point was on NA Miatas because most of the Miatas were NA Miatas. I did some NB stuff as well, of course, but generally speaking, just sheer to numbers. So that's my comfort zone. That's where I spent most of my time. I've wrenched on all generations, but that's the one I've spent the most time on, both at home and professionally. So that's the part I like most, is just being in a car working on a car that I just know so well.
So you heard it here first. Keith likes stock 1.6 Miatas.
I do like them.
Obviously, this is arguably your nicest Miata, I would say.
That's not much of an argument. It is my nicest
Yeah.
Miata, yeah.
Okay, sure. Obviously the nicest Miata. No, your other ones are also very fun for different reasons. They've got different flavors of NA, because you've got anything from stock to, basic kind of, I don't know. Not necessarily basic. It's, standard, let's say standard turbocharged, Then you have the full-blown crazy V8 car that you've done all kinds of things with, you know. So you've run the gamut and you've tried a bunch of stuff. It's interesting that you like to return back to, you know, close to what Mazda delivered the car from the factory. And, you know, there's a lot of nostalgia and a lot of purity if you are into keeping cars stock and pure, which is fine. So I can totally get it.
You did have a question there about ITBs and turbos.
I did, yeah. So actually that's a good transition because speaking of ITBs, that was one of the questions as far as like what would you prefer to have, I think. I've lost the question now. But why don't you wax poetic on ITBs versus, I think it's ITBs versus turbo. Which would you rather? So that's a good question because actually we do get asked that a lot. So what does the Keith Tanner say?
The Keith Tanner, I'm just A, there's a bunch of us. I have always liked response. I've always been drawn to a very quick response. I'll take quality of horsepower over bulk horsepower personally. So I do like ITBs. I've had both an ITB Miata and a turbo Miata in my garage at the same time. The Targa Miata was running ITBs for a while.
For the first Targa?
Yeah, I didn't have it was sort of in between. During the first Target, I was actually running a stock intake manifold.
Oh, okay.
Modified, but stock. And then in between the two Targas, I converted over to ITBs on the high compression 2-liter, and then we pulled that engine out and put in the V8. And at the same time, I had my turbo Smurf that I was working with. At that time, I think it was a 1.6 with a Voodoo with a stage 1 turbo on it.
Right.
Now it's a 1.8 with still got a very small turbo on it. It's modified again for response because that's what I gravitate to. And even the V8s, I mean that's the LS3 that's in my car is an 11-to-1 engine. It's a very high compression engine, and it has a cam in it that is biased very much towards response. It's got extremely sharp throttle response. It's much more fun than the 5.3 I had that I ran the Targa in, just because it's got that edge to it. So yeah, given the choice, I usually will go for ITBs over a turbo just because I like that crispness, that super sharp response. The turbo is great for road trips. I love the way it works when I'm covering distance because it just disappears in the background. ITBs don't, especially on a high compression engine. They hammer like you would not believe the amount of noise. But the turbos are great because you get on the gas on the highway and it's like a big hand comes down and just pushes you forward. But for my own cars, I mean, I've got several cars under 2,000 pounds. I built that Lotus 7 replica, which was 1,200 pounds. That's the sort of thing that I personally gravitate towards. So that's my choice, even though they are a pain in the butt to live with.
So follow up, do you own an ITB car now?
I do own an ITB car.
Ah, okay.
Yes, I do.
So
the E39 M5 came from the factory with ITBs. It's got 8 throttles. I do have a set of Miata ITBs on the shelf, ready to go into a car when I decide to build one for it. So I've thought about it. I've thought about putting on that. They're for a 1.8 though, so I don't really want to turn that into a science fair project. But maybe the Turbo Smurf, who knows? They would drop her down to that. It would be interesting. Actually, that would be interesting. I know what I'm doing this weekend.
If only it were that simple.
It is that simple, Mike.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess when you're the Keith Tanner, sorry. Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. We get a lot of questions about ITBs, so next time we get a question, I'll just forward it to you.
I did do a video on it a couple of years ago.
That's right. Check our YouTube channel. We do have an ITB video. Hey, Travis, maybe you can post that in the comments later. So, or now, or maybe the guys in the background can post that in the comments. Okay, let's do another pretty popular question. When did you realize that Miata is actually the answer?
I'm an old man, Mike. I remember in the late 80s, this is before you were born. In the late 80s, I remember wondering, looking at the horsepower wars there were, such as they were at the time. And car makers were coming out with more and more powerful cars, but they're getting heavier and heavier. And I was just thinking, why doesn't somebody just make one lighter? And that way you don't have to do all of the work of trying to blow it around and, all that sort of thing. So I had Lotus tendencies, shall we say. And I remember
Which you have history with.
I don't have a lot of history with Lotus. It's just that Lotus 7 replica.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Oh, that was the club that you
I
were
used to
with.
hang out with the Lotus Club
That's
of
right.
Eastern Ontario. This is back before the Elise had arrived, so it was just old Lotuses. The president of the club had not driven her car in, I think, 5 years. They all had multiple Lotuses. They're interesting group of people, definitely very fun. I used to drive around in my Miata. They'd make fun of my soulless Japanese roadster. I'd offer to carry parts. We all had a good time. But I remember that when the Miata came out, it was like, this is what I was talking about. Why wasn't somebody doing this? It was like instantly, this is the car that I've been sort of wondering why it didn't exist. So for me, yeah, it was the answer because I was actually asking the question. This is the car I've been looking for. And I bought my first one in, I think it was January 93. So it's been just over 30 years since I bought that first one. It was still under warranty at the time, but yeah, it was my first car. It was all I ever really wanted was one of those.
Is that the Smurf?
No, it's red with silver stripes on it. It's in some.
Oh,
if you look
that
in some of my
one.
books, it's
Yeah.
in some of the pictures in there.
I do know that one.
Poor thing. If I look at it now, I can definitely see the kid who did some of those modifications didn't necessarily know everything I would prefer he knew at the time. There's some stuff in there that I would do differently.
So on that topic, what is the automotive equivalent of the mullet that you did to it at the time that you would be doing differently now at this point?
Well, I put a style bar on it for about 2 weeks, one of the double hump style bars, but I couldn't reconcile it. I had to take it back out. I sold it and put on a real roll bar shortly after. It's got stripes. I mean, those are maybe not, they were uncool for a while there for sure. It's on 16-inch wheels, which is weird. You don't see that so much anymore, but they're SSR integrals, so they're cool 16s.
I do like 16s on NAs and NBs, actually.
The biggest thing,
I wish there were tires available.
Yeah, no kidding. The biggest thing is probably the suspension. I honestly forget what it's on right now. I think it's on an older set of FM springs, but we've learned so much about how to make the suspension work better over the years. Some of the stuff that we did back in the day, I mean, the suspension has just been getting better and better and better. Not necessarily more expensive, but we've just learned how to set them up so much better. And so there's definitely were some dead ends at the time.
So eBay shocks, right?
I mean, you can buy some good shocks on eBay. I think it's actually on Takiko Illuminance right now.
Those aren't eBay. Those are good shocks.
No, if you're going to find them now, it's going to be on eBay because you can't buy them
Well,
anymore.
I guess that's true.
They're
Yeah,
good-
they're
they're good
eBay, but
shocks.
they're on the other
They're
side,
on the other
of
side.
their lifespan.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I ever did anything really, really embarrassing with it. I mean, I drove it like a 20-year-old, so there's that.
I'm sure that Kian wants to know if you ever put underglow on it.
I never put underglow on my car, but one time I was doing a turbo install on a car that was purple with a full Veilside style body kit, the big spiky noses that we had around the turn, the Fast and Furious era. And it had yellow underglow on it.
Wow.
And this was like the actual neon stuff, not the LEDs and not the color changing stuff. And I remember having to put it back on so it shone down on the intercooler just right, just feeling a little dirty about that. It's like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. That I'm putting neon on the bottom of the car.
Oh, that's awesome, though.
That car also had an in-dash DVD player.
This has got to be late 90s, maybe early 2000s?
I mean, I was working at Flyin Miata, so it'd be early 2000s.
Early
But it was
2000s?
pure.
Yeah.
It was the Fast and Furious era. I mean, right.
That was
in there.
appropriate for the time.
Yeah, it was in the. It's the first 2 years I worked at Flyin Miata, so it was 01 to 03, just based on where I was living at the time. The car had an in-dash DVD player that would fold out and do the thing, and there was a Journey DVD in there. So everywhere we drove, we would just let the Journey play constantly. I never knew I knew so many Journey tunes.
This is just a meme before memes were a thing. This is awesome.
Yeah, it was a noticeable car to drive around town. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah, I bet.
yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. Okay, let's see. What new things do we have? Billy, he wants to know if he can have Ron. Yes, actually. I'm going to do a short plug here.
There you go.
Ron, who's not pictured here, but thanks for calling it out, Billy. Yes, Ron, as soon as, well, basically after the Miata reunion is over, because we do want to take it to the Miata reunion and show it off, of course, so everybody can see it. It will be going up on Bring a Trailer, and you or anybody can have Ron. So it's, of course, it's on Bring a Trailer, so you will have to be good at bidding, of course, to make that happen for you. But yes, Ron will eventually go to live at somebody else's house and garage to be enjoyed. So we will make lots of noise about that when that happens, of course. And we do have actually a new exciting video coming out, oh, probably next week, I think at this point, for the next episode of Project Ron. So if you haven't seen it, check out Project Ron on our YouTube channel.
Smooth, Mike. Very smooth.
And now a word from our sponsors. Okay. All right. Oh, and look at that. My guys posted the link to that video and everything. You guys are awesome. Okay, so
Yeah,
let's...
a question over there about thoughts on electric Miata.
Well, we can talk about that if you'd like. So
I did a whole video on it.
I was going to say, yeah, we actually, you talked a lot about electric vehicles. Keith is a bit of a electrical hobbyist. There's a lot of different ways you could interpret that, I guess. That was kind of a poor description, but sure, let's talk about electric Miatas. What is your thoughts? Because there's lots of speculation. What is the next generation Miata going to be? Is it going to be a hybrid? Is it going to be full electric? You know, for what it's worth, for the record, at least I don't know. I don't get calls from any of the Mazda higher-ups, so I don't have any insight. I don't think Keith does either, but maybe you can surprise us with your thoughts.
I can tell you that nobody at Mazda will talk about future products. Any leaks that you might see on the internet, completely fabricated. Yeah, for years, the best we've been able to do is we found out that we could get a blue 2019 RF before they had announced it was going to be a blue 2019 RF or something like that. It's impossible to get product information. So anybody, whatever you're reading on the internet about the next generation Miata, unless it comes from Mazda, they're making it up. Mazda has said that their upcoming, all Miatas or all Mazdas will be electrified by a certain date, 2030, whatever it is. And the next generation Miata will be electrified, but to me, I think it's going to be a mild hybrid. Not a plug-in, but one that's got the ability to just throw in a little bit of electric boost when you need it, and it will be a pure ICE car otherwise. And I think that would be a great Miata to drive, because it's basically going to have extra power on tap when you need it, but without the overhead of turbocharging, supercharging, whatever you want. It could be an extremely fun car to drive. So I'm actually looking forward to that. It doesn't have to be heavy. And basically we're talking Prius type of drivetrain. Mostly it runs on ice all the time. Every once in a while the battery jumps in, gives you a kick in the butt. Because that's the way the Miata engines have been going for years. They've been getting torquier and torquier and torquier. You want that instant response. You want that instant response down low, as over a wide rev range as possible. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to drive. That's also the lightest possible way to do it. And Mazda's still really, really aware of keeping the Miata light. That said, I'd love to build a pure electric one. People have been building electric Miatas forever. I remember autocrossing in the 90s, one time back in Ottawa, and there was a guy there with an electric Miata. And for years when I was doing technical support at Flyin Miata, we would get phone calls from guys who had just done an electric Miata and discovered when they put it back on the ground that the rear wheels were completely jammed on the ground, and they needed suspension. So yeah. I'd get them to send me corner weights so we could come up with suspension options for them. And every single one of them had radically different corner weights. I mean, these guys all had totally different ways of doing it. And then, about 15 years ago, when Tesla sort of appeared, the Roadster and the lithium-ion battery thing started up, those phone calls stopped. So maybe it was a little less than 15 years ago. Basically once Teslas really started hitting the road and real electric performance showed up, people stopped building sort of gas miser, if you want. They're trying to get very efficient cute little sports car things. They were just started going for bulk performance, and it was much easier to buy than it was to build. So those calls stopped. But I think now we're at a point where it'd be really interesting to build a pure electric Miata. I wouldn't do it by sticking a motor on the end of a drive of the transmission. I think that's the wrong way to go about it, because the transmission is vestigial at that point. I want to put a motor sideways in the rear subframe and then put a bunch of batteries up front. I think it would be a complete riot to drive, because again, I mentioned earlier, I love response, and you can get response that you could not believe out of an electric engine, motor, whatever.
Potato.
An electric car. I think it would be really a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to. I've been sketching ideas on something like this for years of what it would be fun to drive. I think my 67 Cadillac, the 66 Cadillac would also be very good in an electric car, because that sort of effortless torque is the same sort of thing that Cadillac was going for at the time. And I think my old Land Rover would actually be a lot of fun as electric as well, because it'd make a great rock crawler. And that's actually the one I'm thinking about the most.
I mean, that wouldn't take much to
I have
improve.
a lot of time in my hand, Mike.
Yeah. I was going to say, do you think Janelle would notice if her Tesla 3 wasn't operable next weekend?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And she also knows what hot brakes smell like, so I'm not allowed to take it to the track. I've never had that thing on the racetrack because, yeah, she knows.
was
She's
gonna say-
been educated a little too well.
Okay. I was going to say, you've got 4 Miatas, you know, so you don't have to drive all of them. One of them can be a project car, maybe your original 93. And then, you know, maybe Janelle wouldn't
Yeah.
mind borrowing the Tesla for measurements.
It would, yeah, actually, that would be a good thing to do with my first 1990. It would be, yeah, maybe I will convert that one. Although honestly, I'd love to do it with an RF, a black RF, for example. Who knows? Watch this space.
So what that means is Keith's going to have his own YouTube channel launched here later this afternoon. No, I'm just kidding.
I do have a YouTube channel. It's got like 6 videos on it. I think I posted something in like 2012 last.
Yeah, I think it was V8 related.
Yeah, that's probably me driving around the track.
Oh,
somewhere.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a good one. If you would like to see more about or hear more about Keith's thoughts on EVs and other electrification, check out the link on the chat. If you guys can post that, that'd be
Talked
awesome.
about that one for a while too.
Yeah, that's another long video. Keith waxed way more poetic on that one. But it is on our YouTube channel if you'd like to check it out. Let's see. Oh, here's a good one. What is the craziest Miata you've ever seen? I'm sure you have seen a lot of Miatas over the years, so if you had to award one Miata that top spot, what would it be?
That's a good question. It's funny, after a while you start glazing over a lot of the builds because you sort of like check box, like, oh yeah, it's one of, like you said, my turbo Smurf, just kind of like a typical. I mean, it's got custom interior stuff on it.
It's a great car.
It's got a different turbo size than usual and stuff, but yeah, it just kind of falls under the category of streetable turbo cars. There's nothing exotic on there. I mean, I totally get
LS
what you're.
swap, boring.
And played out. I'd like to point out that the LS in my MG has been in the MG longer than it was ever in the Firebird or the Camaro it came out of. So it's actually an MG engine now. It's not a GM engine. It was just in the wrong car for a while.
Is that like possession is 9/10 of the law?
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think I have to say the craziest Miata I've ever seen is Zombie Elvis here in town. I mean, here in the shop, the one that Matt built for hill climbs. I mean, I've known that car. I brought that car home from the dealership in the snow, and we immediately tore it apart and built a car for the Super Tuner Challenge. I mean, a lot of work on that car. If you look in my first book, there's pictures of a white car being torn apart and being put back together. That's Elvis.
It was white to begin with?
Yeah, Elvis was
Oh.
white originally. Yeah, we repainted it.
I'm
but,
not sure. I knew it was not stock color.
There's
I didn't
pictures of a
realize it was
red
white.
NB in there as well, and that thing was something a customer sent to us that had, I think, 42 miles when it arrived here because it was trucked to us. And I would go in at night to take pictures for the book and just like tear apart all the work we'd done during the day, take pictures of it, put it all back together again. And Elvis was one of the cars. Anyway, but Elvis has turned into this complete caricature of a Miata with those ridiculous rear tires, and
It's like Ratfink.
It's Ratfink.
Matt
exactly.
might as well be Ratfink.
But for a reason. I mean, it's built that way for a purpose, which makes it so much better than just something that was made crazy for likes or something like this. So I'm going to say that Zombie Elvis is about as high up on that list as it can get.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I don't even know that Matt knows how to use social media, so I doubt that he's out there trying to get clout.
There's Larry Chen did a video on it, a Hoonigan video on Zombie Elvis. That's good to watch. It's got a lot of talking at the end of it, but you get to see the car in full chat, and it's nuts. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, anytime, if it's here in the building and it gets started up, the shipping crew on the far end of the building, I can see them jump every single time, and they're like, the other side of the building is, I don't know, probably 70, 80 feet away, and, more than that maybe? I don't know. It's a long ways away. They're not standing close to the car, and they jump every single time. It's pretty entertaining. But yes, it is a wild car. Shout out to Matt and to Brian for building that car. But yeah, for sure, if you want to know more about Zombie Elvis, go jump on over to Larry Chen's channel and check out that special video. Let's see.
I also sell one of my cars.
Oops. Oh,
All of
actually,
my cars.
that's another good one, Brian. Yeah, so if you were to sell all of your cars, but you can keep only one of them, which one would it be? And would it be a Miata? Bum, bum, bum.
Question is which Miata would it
Yeah, which Miata would be?
Well, let's just open it up. Yeah.
That is a tough one because my cars tend to be very narrow in purpose. You know, you can't use the Targa Miata as a daily driver going to get groceries so much because the trunk lid is held on with hood pins.
I mean, you can.
You can't, it's going to be a lot of trips to the grocery store.
That's just more fun in the driver's seat.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I do have sort of two levels on the cars in terms of there are the forever cars and then the ones that, yeah, someday I really should sell. There's a couple of Miatas that are on that list. That one I'm going to that one's been in the family for over 20 years. I've got to hang on to 338. That's my reference Miata, so that one's not going anywhere. The MG, I mean, I don't use it enough. I would be okay with the MG could probably go. I've got two of those 66 Cadillacs. One of those has effectively turned itself into a parts car, you know, big whoop. The old Land Rover, I've had my fun with it. I'm not heavily bonded with it now, so it's more or less sticking around out of inertia, I guess I'd say.
Or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof, yeah. So, I mean, there's a few that are very definitely on the I want to keep these forever, and they tend to be the ones that I keep inside if at all possible. The CRX is on there for some reason. I bonded with the early CRX when I was in high school. I wanted one, so I've got a good one. So
yeah, for that level or that year of SI build, I think they're pretty cool. And plus, those Ronals that you have installed, they just really complete that car.
So I mean, I would keep the CRX over the Mini, for example. You know, the Mini is fun; it's a riot to drive, but it doesn't push my buttons in quite the same way. So yeah. I did see a question up there about how did you guys come up with the name from Flyin Miata? Now, I will mention that we are coming up on Flyin Miata, or the Dual Alternatives 40th anniversary in just a few weeks. So I'm going to be giving a full history of the company at that point. But basically, Flyin Miata was the name of some of the parts that we sold, and it became better known than the actual company. And then in 2000, we started doing business under Flyin Miata. And I don't know, I need to ask Bill about this. Our phone number is, or our 800 number used to be 1-800-FLY-MX-5s. Well, Flyin Miata, and the tagline was "We make Miatas fly." I mean, that was our thing. We don't have that 800 number anymore, so please don't call that number. I don't know who it belongs to anymore.
They won't sell you Miata parts.
They won't sell you Miata parts, or if they do, they're not ours. So I don't know which came first, if it was the phone number or the name of the parts. But yeah, it came out of Bill came up with a couple of these springs and sway bars and stuff like this, and just the name of those parts became better known than the name of the company. So changed the name of the company.
Well, we have been at this for a while, and we should probably look at wrapping this up. So, yeah, let's do one more question.
No.
And let's do... let's do one that's actually not even Miata related, just because. What is your dream car that's not a Miata?
Lancia Stratos.
Okay.
I would love to build a Stratos replica.
Good call.
They're so ridiculous looking. They've won World Rally Championships. They're apparently a handful and a half to drive. So yeah, I would love to build a Stratos.
Okay, well, you and I can go get some lottery tickets after we finish this, and then we'll see if we can get one of those on order.
Travis is trying to get our attention.
Uh-oh. Does Travis have one more question?
Would Keith have time to answer some of these questions in the comments later? Just to
Cool.
Yeah, I can answer them in the questions in the comments.
So,
or even make comments in the questions, whatever.
Keith likes to make lots of questions in the comments. So yeah, we're going to end it here just because we've already been yakking for an hour or more at this point. So all of the ones, or as many as Keith can stomach to answer after this video is posted on YouTube, he'll go back and try to answer more of them, and I'm sure that there's lots of information and fun, interesting facts that we didn't get to cover in this video, but he'll try to get back to your questions down in the comments after we're done. So, without further ado, Keith Tanner, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate you coming on the show. You know, I know it was a really busy schedule and that you had lots of other interviews and things lined up that you
work you into my press tour.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come sit on my talk show and answer some questions about who is Keith Tanner, what does he do, why Keith Tanner. Well, now we know. Well, some of it.
Some of it.
Anyway, with that, thank you all for watching. Hopefully you liked it. If you like this kind of content, let us know. Give us a like. Give us comment suggestions in that comments box for what else you might want to hear about or have us do presentations on in the future. And of course, If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button and maybe even click the bell so that way you know when we launch videos and talk about all kinds of, yeah, we do live videos every week. So set your calendar reminder for 2 o'clock Mountain Time on Thursday, and we'll see you then. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time.